Hey guys, in this tutorial I will be showing you how to get a dedicated server working with Steam using Unreal Engine 4.18.3 with the AdvancedSessions plugin. Let's get right into it. First thing you're going to do is load the Epic Games launcher. You're going to find your project, find your solid, stable version of your project you've been working on for a long time. Right click on it and do clone. We're going to change the name to, just change whatever yours is to your game name plus source. It'll just make more sense. I'm going to change mine to Cool Stuff Source. That's in the directory I want. That looks good. Create. It's going to give you this warning. Just hit continue. And now we wait. The last time I tried to refresh this after I hit clone and just close out of the launcher and loaded it back up, it didn't fully clone it. So I'm just going to be patient right now and we're just going to wait for it to appear. It will take some time, but I guarantee you it will show up. You just have to wait. There we go. Cool Stuff Source has now showed up here. So now we have a cloned, clean version of our previous working game. So now we want to generate C++ files for this project. So we're going to double click on it, open it up. Alright, so here's our game. You're going to want to find whatever folder you want. I have an all blueprints folder, and in all blueprints I have blueprints. I'm just going to put it in here. So what you want to do is right click, create a new C++ class. Make sure you can leave it just as none. Doesn't matter. It might matter. I use none, so you should probably use none too if you want to get it to work. You can just call it, let's see, what did I say to call it? We're going to call it for code generation and do create class. This is just asking to make it writable. Hit yes, and it will add code to the project. As soon as this is done, it will load Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio Community 2015. You can use whatever you want as long as it works. This is what works for me for this application. Yeah, now we're just sitting here waiting for Visual Studio to load. Make sure that works correctly. There we go. It says compile complete in the bottom. Visual Studio load. Here it is, doing its thing. So now you're going to need to wait for Visual Studio to completely finish loading up before you start touching things. So you can see in the lower left, parsing files in this solution. It's going to take a while, unfortunately, but you're just going to have to wait till it's done, unless you want to mess stuff up. But stuff we can do in the meantime, while this is still parsing its files in the solution and getting all set up, we can go download the Unreal Engine 4 Source. A lot of people seem to be confused, and I was very confused too in the beginning. But the version of Unreal Engine that you load from the Epic Games launcher, this is not the source of the Unreal Engine. To get the source of the Unreal Engine, you want to do these steps. First thing, go to GitHub. This is on the UnrealEngine.com site, Unreal Engine 4 on GitHub, instructions. Come in here, blah, blah, blah. What is GitHub? If you're not familiar with coding, you're going to have to get a little bit familiar with how all this works. Just follow these steps. Create an account in GitHub. Go to your account and associate your GitHub username by entering it into the account field. Put that in there. When you request access to the Epic Games thing, it'll just approve you instantly, and then you'll have it. So once you're done with that, you should eventually wind up on this page right here. So this is just Epic Games / Unreal Engine on GitHub. This is the Unreal Engine source. Come in here, click on branch, take whatever version. I'm sorry, you don't have to do that. Click on fork up here. You're going to want to fork this Unreal Engine to your desktop. Make sure you have GitHub desktop installed. And when you hit fork and you do all that, you come in here into GitHub desktop, and you should wind up with something like this at the end of the day. So I actually thought that setting current branch to release would keep me on the latest released version of the Unreal Engine. Do not make that mistake. I had to redo this tutorial video like 3 times already because they're actually already considering 4.19 a release version. Because when I had it on release, it was actually taking this one, this Origin 4.19. I did not want that because my project is not on 19 yet. Because 19 is still, I thought it was only in preview mode. Anyway, I set my branch to 4.18, and then you're gonna want to fetch. Make sure you have an updated 4.18 copy, whatever version you have, on your desktop. So as soon as that's done, you're gonna want to go to your Windows Explorer. Then you should wind up with something like this in one of your directories: Unreal Engine source. You have the Unreal Engine, and here you go. This is your Unreal Engine source. And in here, you're going to want to do 2 things. You're going to want to do setup, run this setup batch file, and then run, after the setup one is done, run this GenerateProjectFiles batch file. Once those 2 are done, you should be able to double click here on your UE4 solution. This should load up Visual Studio. Now Visual Studio is loaded. And now at this point, we should be able to come up here and choose Development Editor, Win64, UE4, and hit play. Run the build. This should build without any errors, and it should load the Unreal Engine from source. Here it goes. Yours will probably take a little longer. I've already been loading this multiple times today, so it's still there. Everything's cached and loading. Here you go. We are now loading 4.18.3 Unreal Engine source. And once this is done loading, there you go. So this Unreal Project Browser, this is loaded directly from Unreal Engine source. I have some other windows open here. I'm just minimizing. And there we go. So I think I can double click on this and it'll work. No. Okay. That's fine. So just close out of here. So now we know that we can load the Unreal Engine from source. Perfect. Now let's move on to the next step. You can close out of here. We don't need that loaded anymore. Now our goal is to run our game with the source of Unreal Engine. So we're going to go to our Windows Explorer, go to the directory. You have your game that we cloned. Here we are, cool stuff source. Come in here, and you're going to right click on your project file, your uproject file, go to switch Unreal Engine version. Instead of 4.18, we want source build. You have got to have an entry like this, source build, wherever you put your Unreal Engine source. You can go find it. I think mine actually just automatically showed up in here. So we're going to hit OK. It's going to say generating project files. I didn't get any errors this time. If you get errors, just Google them and figure them out. They shouldn't be that complicated. I definitely got errors the first time I did it. Just read them, understand them, and resolve them. It's not that bad. So that generated file successfully. Now we're going to double click on this, and this will build our project with the Unreal Engine source. So we get this file module missing both a different engine version. That's fine, because what it's saying is we cloned it from the Epic Games launcher version. Now we're trying to load it with the source one. So yes, let's rebuild them. Hit yes, starting build. This should also come back with no errors, and if we get some, we'll figure them out too in this video. Another thing, cloning doesn't always take care of your plugins. It does for me. Make sure that the AdvancedSessions plugin is actually still in your plugins folder of your cloned source copy. Otherwise, that's going to cause some confusion there. So we're waiting for this. Starting build. Hoping for no errors. Actually, looking at my notes here, if you do get an error here, one of them might be that your plugin that you copy, if you do have to, or if not, your plugin folder might be read-only. Just right-click on your plugin folder and make it writable if you have to. Boy, this is taking a long time right now. There we go. Alright, could not be compiled. Try rebuilding from source manually. So I definitely saw some cannot read files in there. So I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. I'm going to just do this real quick and change my plugins folder. Check off read only. Uncheck read only. Hit OK. And I'm going to double click on it again. And we're going to try and rebuild it again now. Okay, so I actually paused the video because I had an error that I actually couldn't resolve, and I got rid of it doing some weirdness. I'm honestly not sure what the fix was. So what happened was, after you get the Unreal Engine 4 source to run from Visual Studio on development editor mode, you can close out of that. After that, I'm going to repeat the last steps that I did. We come back in here to our cool stuff source, which is our clone source copy of our game. We want to right-click on the uproject file, switch Unreal Engine version, and set it to the source build. Hit OK. It'll generate project files. One of the errors that I think was part of it maybe was my plugins folder. Well, it says read-only again now, but my plugins folder was read-only, and it said it couldn't open the file, so I changed it. Since reset back to read-only, I don't know. Yeah, after you set this to switch on your Unreal Engine version and it says source build here, double-click on your project, and it should load. This is your first major milestone of getting the dedicated server to work. You should be able to double-click on this having it set to the source Unreal Engine version, and boom, here we are. We are in our working game. In the meantime, or rather, once you get this working, good thing to check is that, actually, we'll go through that later. Those aren't important steps right now. Let me check my steps here. Okay, so now we're on the package project part. So, two things. overall. You have your Unreal Engine source, and you've now launched your project with Unreal Engine source. Awesome. Now take your project, and there's a couple things to check inside your project. I won't pause it. Let me just open it up real quick. So the goal here is that when the dedicated server loads, it's still going to load your blueprints, and it still needs to know exactly what to do. So when my main menu loads for the server, we don't want it to create a main menu and do all that crap. No, that's bad. I hand on this one. So in my main menu, when my server runs, I want it to do this. On begin play, I want to do if we are a dedicated server. So if we're a dedicated server, and it's true, we want to create an advanced session. Yay! We're going to want to pull off the extra settings. We're going to want to do make an array. We're going to want to take this off. Literal session property string. We're going to call this key server name. And this value right here, whatever you put here, is going to be what your players will see in your server, in your game's server browser. This is not the name that will show up on the Steam master server list. So we're just going to type in test. Keep it nice and short. Okay, for these settings, a lot of these I don't understand. I only know it works. You need dedicated server on, and you need use presence off. That's really all you have to change in here. Looks like I have public connection set to 0 on both. Again, I don't know enough about these yet. Honestly, you could probably change them to whatever you need to change them to, but I have mine set to 0 in my working copy, so I'm going to leave them there. So on success, our main menu is going to load. Hey, we're a dedicated server. Come in here. True. Create our dedicated server session, advanced session, and do open level. My actual level is called test map. And our option, we want it set to listen. Compile, save. I don't need source control right now. Boom. There we go. So now this is all set up. Another thing, next thing rather, go into your project settings, edit, project settings, come into maps and modes. Make sure everything in here is set up correctly. Otherwise, your game will not work. Your server will not work. So I have all my stuff set up. I have my main menu game mode. All of these are not default, I don't think. I've set all these myself. Make sure your startup map is just test map. Let me load this project as well so I can make sure I'm just copying everything on my actual working version. Okay, yeah, so you want to make sure that the default map is whatever map you put your logic in for it to create the session because it's a dedicated server. So mine's in main menu. I don't need a transition map. My server's default map, I think this is the main one that causes problems sometimes. This is also main menu. Everything looks good there. This is actually set to none on mine. Set that to none. HUD. This was set to main menu controller. Game state, player state, pawn. That's set to none. Main menu, main menu, main menu. Game instance class. This is a great error. This one's a little buggy. Just come in here, click it, and then click it again. Just to kind of refresh it. Mine gets weird and causes some problems sometimes. Just make sure this is the game instance class you want it to be on. So when that's good, you can close out of that, do save all, make this writable. All right. Go back to my steps here, make sure I'm not skipping anything. Okay. So now we package the project. This is the next big milestone. Right now we're trying to package our game using the Unreal Engine source. So come in here, package project, Windows 64-bit. In other tutorials, I've seen people make a publish folder. It's a really good idea. Please make a publish folder. It's just easier. I call it publish. Come into publish, select folder, and our build starts. This part can take some time to resolve if you have lots of errors. I'm sure I'm going to have some errors too. So let's see how far we get. So while this is loading, there's actually one thing we can kind of proactively go over that needs to be set up correctly. Whoops, that actually needed to be set up correctly before you package this. Sorry. I'll put a comment in the video. Hopefully people will just click it and jump ahead to this part first. In your source clone copy in the config in the default engine, you need to have these things set up correctly. Otherwise, your stuff will not work. And of course, it looks like one of mine is not set up correctly. Yeah. So in your default engine, everything in here has to be set up correctly, especially this stuff right here. Your default game mode, that's correct. It's in my all blueprints. This is what I was talking about before, game instance class. Even though I changed it in the editor, it doesn't seem to have actually updated it in my config file. So this needs to change to all blueprints, and this will be specific to whatever you have your game set up to. So if you see game all blueprints, my game instance, come back in here, make this a little bit smaller. All blueprints, my game instance. You can see the path right there. Game, all blueprints. It is not in third person. This is just a legacy thing left over from starting out my project as a third person game with that tutorial I gave you in the very beginning, first making your very first project. So make sure these are set up correctly. I just changed mine. I'm probably going to have to rebuild. We'll see. I may have actually caught it in time. Yeah. Next important things. Come down here. You need these exactly this way for game engine, the online subsystem, and the online subsystem Steam, and the online subsystem Steam SteamNet driver. This line exactly. Take a screenshot in the video. It needs to be exactly like that. Online subsystem exactly like that. Here's some interesting stuff here. This be enabled, I have Googled for this and nobody can tell me what it means. I actually did some testing and I kind of figured it out myself of what it does. When I launch my dedicated server and this is set to true, it will automatically generate the app ID text file, which is good. Otherwise, you have to manually create the app text file yourself. This can stay true. A lot of people have it as false. Don't know why. You can leave it as true. It works just fine. Your Steam Dev App ID. So I've actually only gotten this. I've only tested thoroughly using the Space War developer app ID. Go ahead and use 480. Steam Dev App ID 480. This will still show you as playing Space War, on Steam. For me, it doesn't, because I actually already have my application ID as a Steamworks partner. I haven't tested it thoroughly yet, putting my own application ID in here that Steam gave me. Maybe I'll make another video, clean up this one using that one instead. But yeah, these are the only special settings. This one too. These are the key settings to getting the dedicated server to work. Everything else is kind of just specific to your game. Just make sure these are correct. Those will be your first source of errors, and make sure these are correct. These will be much harder to troubleshoot because your server will probably just not work. You need them exactly like this. So that's your default engine. So the reason this is so important is because when you package your project is being packaged with these settings right here from this text file. This editor is supposed to, in the project settings here, in maps and modes, this screen is supposed to update that text file. So in here, where it has my game instance, for whatever reason for me, it just didn't update it. I may not have saved something correctly. Oh, here we go. Here's our first error in our build. Could not provision directory mobile. Let's see if I can figure that out while it's still getting ready to fail. I don't think it's going to succeed when it has that. So project settings. Make it smaller so we can still see the build. So yeah, it's failing on all the mobile device folders. Okay. So this is our first source of errors. Come into project settings, go to supported platforms, uncheck all platforms. We only want Windows. We don't want anything else. If you're on Linux, I'm sorry. This tutorial is only for Windows. Make sure Windows is selected only. Just hit this X. So now I'm just going to kind of wait for this to fail. Actually, while this is still failing, again, I'm going to come in project settings, go to maps and modes, come down here. Oh, actually, not in there. In editor, where is it? Oh, packaging. Under project at the very top, packaging. Come in here. It's somewhere in here. Is it this drop down? There we go. Okay, so in this drop down, you can do directories to never cook. So I want to come in here. I'm going to add 3 elements because I know there's 3 things that I kind of want to get rid of. Alchemist House. Storage House. And oops, where was I? Okay. Greenwood Fantasy Village. Maybe there's even one more I can get rid of. 2 more. Content. Classic Office. By the way, all these things that I have in here, these are just from the Unreal Marketplace. They're just some assets that I bought for my game. And Diner. Okay, that's like 7 gigs right there that we don't need to package with our game because I'm not actually using any of these in the test level. So I could hit X on that. Should say build failed in just a second. Build successful. Okay, so I didn't expect it to say build successful. I guess the supported platform error doesn't really matter. I swear it did last time. So that's great. Build successful. We're going to run with that. We don't need to really do anything else in here. Let me open up my steps. So now we have successfully packaged our project. Now that we have a work. Oh, so now the next thing to check is make sure it works. So I should be able to come in here, cool stuff source, publish, Windows no editor. I should be able to double click on this and load my game. No. The map specified on the command line, game third person BP maps main menu could not be found. Okay, so that means it packaged, but some of the things were set up incorrectly. Let me see that error again. Game third person BP maps main menu. Okay. So I still have something set up incorrectly. We're going to go to our config, default engine. Is there anything with third person in here? Oh, yep, there it is. Plain as day. All blueprints. I should just copy this from my working version. So I'm going to open up my working engine file. This is my working one. You can see here it already has all blueprints there. So that's all set up good. That's probably going to be the only error. So I'm going to close out of this. And now come in here and package it again. This time it should be a lot faster. I always like to delete this folder. I don't trust it overwriting everything in there. So just delete what was in your published folder. Doesn't matter. You're just going to build it all again. Select folder. And we're going to repackage. All right, build successful. So again, first step, you can leave this open. Go to your published folder where you're packaging it. Go to Windows no editor. Oops, wrong directory. Sorry, wrong game. Cool stuff source. Publish. Windows no editor. Windows no editor. Sometimes it puts two folders in there. I don't know why. Weird little bug it does. Doesn't really matter. And double click on your game. Should load this time. It loaded blackness, and I think I know why. I made a slight error. Gonna open up my level blueprint again for the main menu, and yep, whoops. It's not a dedicated server yet, and I forgot to change this false. I'm going to change this false flag back to what it was doing on my main menu. So it comes in here on begin play. Oops, we're not a dedicated server. Go about our business and do whatever game logic we had, which is for me, just create my main menu. That's fine. So now, that little change. Gotta repackage again. That's just how it goes. Come in here, gonna delete our folder again. Oh, that's why it doesn't. So if I go back to publish first. Okay, so publish folder, select folder. Now we gotta package it again. All right, build successful. Now, again, first step, gotta make sure what you just packaged works. Go into your game, cool stuff source, publish, Windows no editor. Still made the same two folders. Whatever, doesn't matter. Double click on your game. It should load your game, and there we are. Got my game. I know from here everything works. No problem. Got my server browser. My host name. Alright. We're good. We've reached the next huge milestone in this process. I was going to say painful, but I think it's only painful because I keep making mistakes. Okay, so now we have a working source-built version of our game. Perfect. Next step. And we checked that it works. Good. Next step. Now for the server part. We need to load up Visual Studio. So to do that, we want to go into our game. Double click on your game solution here, cool stuff source. Double click. load Visual Studio. Now we finally get to do a very little bit of C++ coding. So close out of your for code generation. We're actually not going to use that. That was only just used to trigger it having C++ attached to it. What we're looking for in here is under source. It's cool stuff source here. There's a cool stuff source. There's a cool stuff source editor. We need a cool stuff source server. So I'm going to load up my working version of my project. And by the way, in the lower left here, it's going to need to finish parsing all of this again. It's just how it goes. Gotta wait for that. But in the meantime, I can at least load my working version one, so we don't make any mistakes. Here, so I'm going to load this Visual Studio project. Drag this over to my other monitor. All right. So while this is loading, I'm going to pull up another web page for you guys that is actually outdated by Epic and that they have chosen not to update yet. This is probably where a lot of the confusion is coming from, because it involves C++ and their page is outdated and will not work the way it's given. Let's see. Where's my bookmark? I'm just going to type it in Google because I'm not able to find it right now. Unreal Engine, dedicated server, Epic Games. Here it is. Oops, not that one. Actually, it seems like there's two different pages. There's a standalone dedicated server, and there's a dedicated server guide on their page. This is actually the one that I used that was incorrect. Standalone dedicated server. Nope, these steps are old. So what you can do actually is you can copy and paste, copy this entire thing. I think we can do this while this is loading. Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to copy right in here your cool stuff source.target.cs. You're going to paste, paste. I guess it's easier to just do it in in here. Whoops, wrong folder again. So go in cool stuff source, and in here, cool stuff source.target.cs, we're going to copy, we're going to paste, we're going to rename, and we want this to be called cool stuff source server. Come in here now, source folder, add existing item. We're going to look for the one we just made. Go back to cool stuff source, cool stuff source server, add, right there. That's what we want. Double click it, open it up, delete everything in there. Take from this web page if you want, or just take from my screen, doesn't matter. Control A, oops, I guess it doesn't work like that on this page. Copy everything in this box they give you, put it in here, and now you can actually comment out or delete, whichever you want, everything under target rules interface. This entire section is old code, doesn't work anymore. Boom. Don't need it. Save. And now we're going to do, oops, am I missing a parenthesis? Yes. Bracket. There we go. All right. So now we want to rename stuff. Very simple renaming here. GameServer.Target should be your game name. Should replace game here. So instead of game, we're going to have cool stuff source server target. And then for game server target, we're going to have the same thing. We're going to have, I'm trying to hold the ice cream cone and do this at the same time. Cool stuff source server target. And then the very last thing, oops, you know what? This one's actually missing a line too. You want to have as well, additionally, this line. I'm taking this from my working copy. Extra modules, add, instead of that name, we're going to want to have cool stuff source. Just like that. No server, no target. We've got our cool stuff source server target, cool stuff source server target, and then our extra modules add name, cool stuff source. And then save that. By this time now in the lower left, you can see it's done. You can always double check, make sure nothing's weird. This should say your version number in the lower right. And we're good. We just added the server functionality to link it correctly. So now, let me load my steps again real quick, make sure I'm not missing anything. I'll post in the comments this file for you guys. You don't have to read my screen. Let's see, rename the game, save everything. Okay, now that this is done, this is all saved. All I had to do is really do Control S and save that. And close out of here. Sure, just save everything. Doesn't hurt. Looks like the next thing we do is go back, whoops. Go back to our cool stuff source. Right click on your uproject file and do generate Visual Studio project files. Some of the order of these steps, I'm not sure how much they matter or what makes a difference. Just, they have to work. If you come in here and do right click and you generate Visual Studio project files and you start getting errors, you've got to fix them. Can't have any errors in this process. So I didn't get any errors after I did it. Looks like it worked. There's another thing I want to show you guys, another error you can avoid that you won't have to Google. This one's actually from an Epic guy. He actually put code in here that will always generate errors on Steam. These errors don't seem to actually affect anything with your dedicated server, but if you really want to get rid of the errors like I do all the time, you want to go to your engine, UE4, plugins, online subsystem Steam, source, I think it's private, and it is, I'm looking for online session async server Steam. Online session async server Steam. Open this guy up, and right up here, you can see these are the files from the source engine. Nothing to do with your game. These cause a game tags overflow error on Steam. To get rid of that error, it's because these defines, these are too long. They need to be smaller, so I abbreviated them all. Made them very simple. There's one more. You have to change all the references of these, so SPN, now I've referenced it somewhere. So right here, what is this line? 342, come in here, change all of these to be your new abbreviations. I think that's actually it. Let me type in SGDir. There's one reference of it. So line 772, I'll need to make a change. And SGDesk. That's it. So that's it. Not too many places to make those changes. So after that, you should be able to come in here. This is the real important part. Right click on your project solution. So right here, right up here, main solution, cool stuff source. Right click and do, oh, sorry, before you do that, make sure you're set to development server. If you don't have development server in here, it's because something bad happened and you need to go back through some of the steps. I honestly forget what step triggers development server showing up in here. But yes, make sure development server is selected. Just for cleanliness sake, I'm going to wait for this lower left section to finish doing whatever it's doing. And as soon as that's done, we can finally build our dedicated server. Again, okay, so that's done now. Perfect. Again, let me emphasize real quick. Some of these steps, I'm very aware, do not need to be done in this order. You don't have to wait for certain things, but at this point, getting dedicated servers to work with Steam, with AdvancedSessions, with Unreal Engine, built from source, I have become superstitious and very voodoo about it. So I'm just doing everything exactly the way I did it before. Try and get this to work. So, good. Now we're ready for our big moment. Development server, right click our solution, build solution. At this point, understand that anytime you change your game now, you will need to rebuild your server because your server needs to be using the same build. You can't have a version of your game then change like your My Game instance class, do some other physics in your game, and then load the server. You're eventually going to run into problems. Gotta rebuild your server every time you rebuild your game's executable. All right. We have finally built our server. I think it's been, I don't know how long it's been, at least 5-10 minutes. There you go. Build succeeded. We're done building our server. So now you can minimize Visual Studio. Go into your game, source, clone, cool stuff source. You're going to want to go into binaries, Win64, and you should see 4 files here, all with server, all different types. You're going to want to copy these. These are the servers you just built from Visual Studio. Copy, back, publish. We're going to our publish folder now of our packaged working executable go into engine binaries, Win64. Oh, sorry. Oh, yep, whoops. Windows no editor, cool stuff source binaries, Win64. Paste them in here. Right click on your server. Oops, sorry. Right click on your server, create a shortcut. Right click on your shortcut properties, go to the end of the target, type in -log. This way we'll be able to see what the heck is going on. Oh, by the way, that reminds me of something very helpful that a lot of people don't have in their engine files. So take a quick step back in your cool stuff source config in your default engine. There's 4 lines in here. Let me get them real quick. Oh, here. Can't tell which one. Here they are. Okay. I don't know which one I opened. Restart here. Okay, so in your default engine, wherever, just put it under your Steam, your last SteamNet driver thing. Core.log. Have these 3: log streaming, log config, and log property set to verbose. Save. This won't dynamically update your executable or your server, unfortunately. You're going to have to package and then rebuild the server in order to get the benefit of putting that logging in there. So yeah, put that logging in there. Alright, so anyway, back to cool stuff source, publish binaries 164. Alright, so now that this has the -log in here at the end, it'll come up with the command prompt and show us everything that's going on the server. Before you click that, there's a couple reasons why your server is not going to work. Actually, I have 2 listed. Let's start with the first one. So I'm going to log into my router here. You're going to need to forward 2 ports on your router. Don't know about port forwarding? You're about to learn a little bit. I have an Asus RT AC66U router. On my router, all I have to do is log in, go to WAN, virtual server port forwarding. I'm on the Merlin firmware, by the way. WAN, virtual server port forwarding. Come down here, open up a port for 27015 and 7777. Gotta have these both open. If you don't know how to port forward, it's not hard. Put in your IP, put in the port, just put TCP and UDP. I think Steam is only UDP. I forget how it all works. I just put both because I'm not really sure it matters that much right now. So do that. Gotta have both these ports forwarded for this to work. 27015 7777. Port forward on your router. That's the first place to open them. Second place to open them is Windows Firewall. This was a huge pain for me to figure out. When you're in Windows Defender Firewall, click on Allow an app or feature through the Windows Defender Firewall. Oops, sorry. Go to Advanced Settings. In here, click on Inbound Rules. Right click on Inbound Rules. Go to New Rule. Port. Next. And make a different entry for each one. So I already have them. I'm going to scroll to them to show you. Here we go. I made it really clear and easy to read. So this is open port 27015 for TCP, open port 27015 for UDP. Same for TCP and UDP on 7777. Gotta have these 4 entries, otherwise you're gonna be in Windows Firewall hell. That's what you need there. If you're still having problems, you might need to go into Allow an app or feature through Windows Defender Firewall. Scroll down here. look for your game. You'll have to go to details. Oops, not details. I have these in here too. I think those are automatically generated from Windows Firewall. Yeah, these are just the rules imported into this screen. Your game should show up in here. Mine's not showing up in here, the cool stuff source, because I haven't double clicked on the server yet. So yeah, that should be it. We should be good to go. So now I'm gonna double click on my server. So the first thing you're gonna notice, it generated this file, Steam App ID. Open it, 480. Good. It should be making this file. That should be that be enabled setting that we saw in the engine. There you go. No errors. You should not see anything yellow. You should not see anything red. You should only see white stuff like this. If you get a yellow error saying Steam API stuff, make sure you're logged into Steam, because you have to be logged into Steam for it to connect to the server. So now, let's check if our server is working. The best way to check it is to load Steam. And in Steam, make this a little smaller. You can go to View, Servers, LAN. There it is. There is our dedicated server connecting with Steam on the LAN. If we do View Server Info, there it is. That's my local IP from my router. Perfect. Now here's the really tricky part. The Internet tab. This is what everybody wants to get working. Refresh all. And we're going to look for that 9 number. There it is. And now we have successfully done it. Our server is now registered with Steam. It's on the Internet tab. That means anyone can connect to it. Right click on it, go to View Server Info. There it is. That's my public IP, not my local IP. That's my actual IP of my router. 7.1, boom. There it is. Perfect. Exactly what we want to see. So now comes a bunch of questions I don't have answers to. This 901135 whatever number that generates every time I create the server, this number is going to change. It seems to be some sort of unique ID. I almost guarantee you that number is in the engine, UE4, plugins, online subsystems, Steam, source, private, online session, async server, Steam. So in the same file, we change these defines. If you type in, let's see, name, there's a whole bunch of settings in here, and I'm sure if you read through these and took time to understand them, you'd be able to find out. Oh, here's another change I made, by the way. Line 136, text banana. It used to say session own and username. This corrects another one of the game tag overflow errors. I just have it in there because. But there's a setting in here. Oh, here it is, maybe. It's putting some sort of unique ID for the server name to Steam. Not a big deal. This proves to us that it works. When you get into the specifics of finally finishing developing your game, that's where you'll need to start finishing off these details, making this be an actual name. This will be your game name. That's the define that we saw. This 00, you gotta find out where that's generating. This map tag, not sure where that's being generated, somewhere in that same file probably. But there it is. That's good. If I double click on this, it's not gonna work because it's gonna say you don't have that third-party mod installed, because it's looking for Space War, which is that dev app 480 ID. With my app ID, I actually did get it to the point where I could double click on here in the Internet tab and it would load my game, but it wouldn't connect to the server. Whole bunch of tweaking I can do there. So there you have it. This is how you get a dedicated server with Steam working. If I was to repackage the game and do it with the new logging, then this command prompt would have a whole bunch of other useful settings in it that you could see. Unfortunately, I'm not at the point yet where I know how to join my own dedicated server, because you can't log into Steam twice on the same machine. For instance, if I do this, if I try and load the server twice, boom, you're going to see that it's having trouble with the auth login. Can't initialize Steam because I'm already logged into Steam. Server and client running on the same machine doesn't work. So I can't really test this and show you guys, but I guarantee you this this works. If you want specifics of how my server browser in my game works, I can give them to you in another video. It's not hard. But yeah, when I host this, my wife can join on her computer, and I've also tested it with someone somewhere else, and they can join just fine. It shows up in the server browser, works great. The logging works in here. It shows they logged in with their Steam name, all sorts of stuff. It's perfect. So this is how you get dedicated servers to work with Steam. As long as you have no errors in here, and if you can see it in the Steam master server list here on the Internet tab, you're good. That means the rest of the problems you're having are definitely going to be in your game, in your browser settings, your join server logic. I can take some time right now actually to show you where it does my join game logic right here. Actually, find game. This is what you guys want. I do find session advanced. I put in the player controller of the player that's pretty much clicking that button. Find 50 results. Don't only use LAN. If you want to make a LAN tab for your game, then do this again and then click LAN. This is just some basic logic where I get each server entry and then cast it and put it into my server entry plates. So it builds out my server browser. Joining server. I know mine doesn't work correctly yet completely, but I can at least get into my game. So yeah. If you guys have any questions or need get stuck somewhere, go ahead and let me know. I can try and answer them, but this is how far I was able to get. My game completely works. Dedicated server and all. And there you go. For this, if you want to test your dedicated server, make sure it's working at all. Make sure you're logged out of Steam. Load your server. And even though it gets these errors, that's fine because it's not connected to Steam. You should still be able to join it, is the point. So now, I'm going to load the game. 192.168.2. And there. It should go ahead and join the game. And then if I do Control Escape and look at my server log, boom, you can see it works. You can see right here, client net speed. There's my join name, join succeeded. Instead of having my Steam name here, it actually has my computer name. If you have it working on Steam, it's fine. It'll just show, you'll know because it'll have my Steam name, or your Steam name instead of your computer name. But there you go. I just joined my dedicated server. Boom. That's a great way to test. Now, of course, testing it on Steam, you can have all the components. Just know that it's something in your game search logic with the find session, and there's something with Steam connectivity timing. If you can get it to show up in the Steam master server list, you are golden. It has to show up in the LAN and the Internet tab, and you've done everything you need to do for that part. The rest of it, you just have to tweak the find game, the way it finds the session for your game in your game. And there you go. Let me guys know what questions I can answer for you. I don't honestly know much more than I showed you, but I've gotten familiar with it enough I can probably help you figure something out.